synonymous with Bob Hope when I was growing up was USO and entertaining the troops.
And there he is now, Bob Hope.
He invented the way you entertain the troops. A lot of performers have done it since, but I know that all the rules were invented by Hope.
I'm very happy to have the chance to tell you about our trip this summer because it was really exciting. And those troops in North Africa are doing a job, and they're all great guys over there outside of one boy that I met while I was doing KP. This lad had been breaking all the rules, shooting dice, going AWL, running around with women. So I walked up to him and I said, "Son, what's the big idea?" And he said, "Mr. Hope, did you give a pint of blood to the Red Cross last year?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, shake hands with the guy that got it."
He was there, certainly when the country needed him, and for every man and woman who wore the uniform, I mean, he was a hero.
The Pepsodent Show, starring Bob Hope.
May 1941, 7 months before the Japanese sneak attack on Pearl Harbor. The producer of the Bob Hope radio show suggested that he take the program out of its Hollywood studio to broadcast one show from the airbase at March Field. At first, Bob had no interest in dragging the entire cast, crew, and equipment on a 59-mile road trip. But the idea of performing in front of entertainment-starved servicemen proved irresistible.
Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, at March Field, one of the Army's great flying fields located near Riverside, California. And what a wonderful welcome they gave me. As soon as I got in the camp, I received a 10-gun salute. They told me on the operating table.
Response from the men was electric, and Bob realized that he'd been wrong about hitting the road to entertain troops. "I was resisting an idea that was to change my whole life," he wrote later. "We had no idea we were going to discover an audience so ready for laughter."
From somewhere in North Africa.
In a theater somewhere in England.
From somewhere in the South Pacific.
From the home front to the fighting fronts, the #1 comedian of the armed forces, Bob Hope.
How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? This is Bob broadcasting from the Northern Supply Base Hope.
This is Bob, Mosquito Network Hope.
Yes, sir, this is Bob, Army Camp Hope. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Bob. Don't ask me where I am because I don't know, and even if I did know, I couldn't tell because it's a military secret, Hope.
Flushed with excitement by the March Field experience, Bob Hope decided to broadcast his weekly radio show from military bases across the country and around the world for the duration of what would be a difficult, painful, and costly war. Bob's patriotic dedication inspired other stars to become involved in the war effort. Entertainment played a vital role in helping Americans on the battlefront and the home front sustain the drive and will to fight.
Thank you. How are you, fellow tourists? How are you?
Bob Hope changed the rules of comedy during World War II. Certainly he wanted to be funny, but he also had to keep in mind the daily death and destruction enveloping the troops. He chose to assume the viewpoint of the average soldier, battling not just the Germans and the Japanese, but also boredom and mud and loneliness and fear.
And I'll never forget the plane trip across the Atlantic. What thrills. You can take my pilot's word for it. I wasn't nervous, but I was shaking so hard the pilot cut out both motors and my knees kept the plane in the air.
Many entertainers went overseas to entertain the troops, but none were as intrepid as Bob Hope.
I slept right in the barracks last night with the boys. You know what barracks are. That's 2,000 cots separated by individual crap games.
And none connected with the troops the way Bob Hope did. He made jokes about the barracks and the lack of women and the privations of Army life. That forged an amazing connection with the troops. They felt that he understood them.
Well, you know, all these boys out here have a plenty rugged time, Francis, but I still wish that I was one of these boys out here. I want to tell you.
You know, Bob, I really don't think you could take it.
You don't think I could take it, huh?
No. You see, you have to forget all about fear.
Well, that's for me.
You have to forget all about comfort.
That's for me.
And you have to forget all about women.
That's for them.
Hope is a famous American entertainer. They may well have listened to him at home on the radios in the 1930s. He is a reminder of home.
He's a reminder of a normal period. He reminds people of a world that is so very far away. And perhaps for some of them, he reminds them of a world that they are not sure they're going to see again. And for others, he's a reminder of a world that they're actually fighting for.
He was definitely kind of the home front ambassador. He went there for everybody that couldn't go there. He saw your son and your father and your brother and your nephew. He was your representative, and he was being kind to them. He was cheering them up. He was doing what you would do if you could. He gave them a good time in the worst of times.
I just want you boys to see what you're fighting for, that's all.
It really meant a lot to him personally. There's all these accounts that have been confirmed where he'd go and he'd entertain the troops, and then he'd find out that, you know, one division or one brigade was 50 miles that way. They had to miss the show because they had been assigned over there, and he'd say, well, where are they? And they would get in jeeps and go and find those people that missed the show and do a smaller show for them.
You ready?
What do you want?
Nothing to it. My hand just burned off. Are we winning?
He did things in the Army that were very dangerous. I mean, he could have been killed a number of times. The stories that he came back with were just, I mean, he was in foxholes with personnel. He took a lot of chances. And I think part of that is what made the audience love him even more, because he just wasn't telling jokes. He was out there. Bob Hope was embedded with the soldiers, and America loved him for that, and rightly so.
He wasn't a guy working for money anymore. He was like a guy on a mission. He found something that was bigger than money, bigger than anything, which was filling the need of those guys, the desperate need. They had to laugh.
Ladies and gentlemen, these wounded men have been through many bitter campaigns. What they're going to face now is ridiculous. Here he is, Bob Hope.
Don't think it didn't take its toll on Bob, because he's told me stories. World War II, he was in the South Pacific, and the Army asked him if he would go to an island called Pavuvu. He said, we're training a special force there. They're all alone, and they have nothing, and a little entertainment will go a long way. Well, he had to fly in a Piper Cub that could barely land there, and he did this show. He got tremendous laughs. And later he read 45% of the men he did the show for were killed. Later, he was in San Francisco, and he was going through an Army hospital there, all the wounded men. He said, and one of the wounded guys sat up and said to Bob, Pavuvu, and he broke up, because it meant, he knew what it meant.
In order to do what he had to do with the troops and go into those hospital wards and see these poor fellows badly mangled and some of them close to death and deal with real life and death situations was something like, you know, it colored his life in a lot of ways.
From Pearl Harbor to the beaches of Normandy, from victory in Europe to the mushroom clouds looming large over Japan, America's fighting men and women were thrilled and honored that Bob Hope was there for them, and they, in turn, became important to him. He would carry the memories and the patriotic glow from World War II with him for the rest of his life.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Bob Hope. Well, this is it. That day we've been waiting for, that day we've been praying for. This day means so many different things to so many different people. To the men who made this day possible, we know that it means the beginning of life again. It means home. Thanks to their sacrifices, we still have homes. Thanks to their sacrifices, there's one place left where you can still walk down a street and find all the buildings still in one piece. That was their promise to humanity, to sacrifice, and the world knows how completely they've kept their promise. We've been headed for this day for 3.5 years of war. 3.5 years is a long time. For many Americans, it'll be forever. A terrible menace to civilization has been erased, Congratulations, men.
Boys at this here base, you boys who set the pace, 'cause you're the guys who are gonna go into Fuhrer's face. Oh, thank you so much.